Thank you very much. And I think it was on purpose that Carlos put me first so that I can then be followed by Jan and Jerry, who will wake you back up right before the end of the session. So I'm very pleased to be with you today to shed some light on the issue of what makes a course qualify for credit. Even before the advent of MOOCs, online education, and the flipped classroom model, this was an important question, but it has become increasingly important as the higher education industry responds to fundamental change that is affecting our environment. To provide the context for my discussion of the central question that I was asked to consider, my remarks will begin with a description of some of the environmental change that is taking place in higher education. The middle section of my talk will describe the process that we follow at the University of Utah to determine whether a course is sufficiently rigorous and comprehensive to qualify for academic credit, with special attention given to MOOCs. This is not a question that I can answer for all of higher education because each institution has its own approach. Nevertheless, I believe that the process that we follow at my university is illustrative of the process that you would observe at many institutions. It will become clear through my presentation that the times in higher education are turbulent, and the process of assigning credit is difficult and involves significant application of judgment. So in the last section of my talk, I will share a proposal for significant change in the organizational structure of the American Accounting Association and the opportunities that those changes will create for greater collaboration on educational issues between the American Accounting Association and key partners such as NASBA. But before I go down that path, let me just share some of what the American Accounting Association is all about. The AAA is not the group to call if you're having car trouble. A lot of people think we are, but we are not. We are an organization of over 7,000 accounting educators from around the globe. Our organization was formed almost 100 years ago to provide a forum for accounting educators to network, share ideas, and learn from one another. We sponsor 20 mid-year conferences each year, where our members gather to discuss academic accounting research and teaching issues. We also sponsor an annual meeting that attracts over 3,000 attendees and 1,800 research paper submissions each year. We are the publisher of 15 academic journals, including the Accounting Review, which is one of the oldest and highest ranked journals in the field. In short, we are the world's largest organization of accounting academics. So the environment, there we go. Now it's going to go one more? No, good. The environment for higher education is changing on many fronts. Advances in technology are impacting both teaching and academic research. MOOCs, online learning, the flipped classroom model, competency-based learning models, mobile access, and wearable technology are just a few of the technological changes that are impacting how, when, and where professors teach and conduct research. These changes give rise to challenges, but also opportunities to experiment with new pedagogies that can improve student learning outcomes. Society's expectations for higher education are also changing. The extent to which a university degree leads to a job and successful job performance is being questioned. There is little appreciation for the link between scholarship and enriched educational and economic outcomes for society. Thus, it is more important than ever that the academy critically evaluate our performance, the value that we create for society, and how we measure and communicate that value. Higher education is developing globally as well. Research expectations at universities all over the world are rising, and many universities have adopted the U.S. standard of requiring publications in top-tier, often U.S. venues in order to achieve tenure. This increases competition for U.S. journal space, but also provides opportunities for international collaboration on research. International universities are working hard to expand their market share domestically and internationally. And this increases competition for international students who traditionally have paid higher tuition. Finally, the business model for higher education is changing. Sources of revenue, the competitive landscape, what students want, and the demographics of who they are is shifting. Many schools are experimenting with new business models to improve operational efficiency and to respond to changing student needs. I'll spend the next few moments just touching on each of these changes in a bit more detail. MOOCs, or Massive Open Online Courses, began to emerge in 2012. A MOOC is an online web-based course aimed at unlimited participation. In addition to traditional course materials, such as videos, readings, and problem sets, MOOCs offer interactive user forums which allow students and professors to interact. The three most well-known MOOC providers associated with top universities are Coursera, Udacity, and edX. MOOCs have their supporters and their detractors, but they continue to grow in quality and impact. In January 2013, Udacity launched its first MOOC for Credit in collaboration with San Jose State University, and a few months later announced the first MOOC-based master's degree. That degree is in computer science and is offered in collaboration with AT&T and the Georgia Institute of Technology, which is the #1 ranked university in computer science. GIT's Bricks and Mortar program is conducted on campus, graduates 300 students a year, is supported by 80 faculty, engages in no corporate partnerships, and costs about $60,000. In contrast, their MOOC program is fully online, has a 3-year enrollment goal of 10,000 students, will be supported by hiring just 8 additional Ph.D. faculty, and involves a partnership with AT&T, who provided funding for the first year of development and industry experts to work with faculty to develop applied courses. The tuition for the online MOOC degree is just $7,000. Closer to home for us, Professor Brian Boucher of Wharton introduced the first MBA introductory accounting MOOC in fall of 2013. 56,000 students registered for his class. The typical completion rate for a MOOC is around 10%, and Professor Boucher's course had a similar completion rate. Even so, 5,600 students completed his course that fall, which was twice the number of students that he had taught during his entire 10 years at Wharton. In addition to the accounting MOOC, Wharton offered 3 other MBA MOOCs through Coursera, which might lead us to question, why is it that Wharton would be offering their courses for free? Well, they collect large amounts of data on student engagement and student outcomes, and using big data analytics helps Wharton to understand what does or does not motivate students to engage and to learn. And by evaluating the performance of students all over the world, they are able to identify top talent and target them for recruitment into their MBA program. The MOOC also provides a vast global advertising and recruiting tool for the university. Conducting valid assessments in the classroom is challenging. Due to advances in technology, faculty must be increasingly vigilant to ensure that students get credit only for the work that they themselves have completed. But assessment in an online environment with large numbers of students can be even more challenging. The 2 most common methods of MOOC assessment are machine-graded multiple-choice tests and peer-reviewed written assignments. Peer review is often based upon sample answers or rubrics which guide the grader on how many points to award different answers. On the downside, peer grading rubrics cannot be as complex as those that would be used if a faculty member or a TA were doing the grading themselves. On the upside, students learn and become more engaged via the grading of other students. Exams may be proctored at regional testing centers, but online methods are also being employed, including eavesdropping technologies using webcams, the monitoring of mouse clicks, and the monitoring of typing styles. How students want to learn is also changing. The 2013 New Media Consortium Horizon Report identified games and gamification as one of 6 technologies that could significantly impact higher education in the next 1 to 5 years. The use of games to increase student engagement and learning is not new. For example, many faculty have used board games like Monopoly to teach basic accounting principles. But gamification takes the incorporation of games and game mechanics into course content into a new level and marries it with online delivery. Society's expectations for higher education are changing. Even though the data continues to suggest that a college degree delivers significant economic value, a Pew Research study found that only 60% of Americans believe that colleges have a positive effect on society. 57% feel that colleges do not provide good value for money, and fully 75% said college is too expensive to afford. Even if college continues to be a value-added activity on average, this is not the case across the board. Concerns over the cost-benefit trade-off of a college degree have led the Obama administration to put forward a proposal to disclose college performance metrics. The metrics are intended to increase transparency for students and families comparing across universities. The college scorecard, the elements of which you see on the overhead slide, is already available at the Department of Education website. And the administration has proposed linking access to federal student financial aid to college performance as early as 2018. Few, if any, universities could survive in the absence of students' ability to access these funds. The metrics presented on the screen are for my university, the University of Utah, but you can find out how any university stacks up by going to the College Scorecard website. Higher education is going through a rapid process of globalization. The number of and quality of overseas institutions of higher education is growing, and many international universities are working hard to expand their market share domestically and internationally. Some are working in close partnership with their governments to make it easier for international students to stay after graduation and gain valuable work experience, which makes those countries that much more attractive to international students. In the US, visa restrictions make it very difficult for students from non-STEM fields to stay in the US after graduation. We are seeing the impact of greater competition for international students on the demand for US degrees. For example, applications for international students to our Masters of Accounting and Masters of Science and Finance programs were down 20 to 30% for fall 2014. Our experience is consistent with the national trend and is not unique to my university. Since non-resident students typically pay much higher tuition rates, that brings me to the last issue, which is that of our changing business model. Oops, there we go. The environment in which higher education operates is going through so much change, it should come as no surprise that the traditional business model is under pressure. Unfortunately, the economic health of the higher education industry viewed from the outside is not good. Bain and Company concluded that nearly a third of universities are financially unsound. In this diagram, the institutions that are in the upper right blocks are those whose financial position is deteriorating. The financial sustainability of those in the lower left blocks is improving, and those in the middle could go either way. My university resides in, thankfully, one of the lower blocks, and it's the one that is in the block in blue. But you can find Bain & Company's assessment of the financial sustainability of any university in the U.S. by going to the sustainableuniversity.com website. So why is higher education struggling? In their report on the 2014 Financial Outlook for Higher Education, Moody's pointed to the following factors to explain their negative rating for the industry. Pent-up pressure to increase compensation and invest in programs and facilities. Weak economic conditions continue to constrain students' ability to pay higher tuition. Student loan debt is now the largest source of consumer debt in the U.S. economy. It tops $1 trillion in total, and default rates are at all-time highs. Tuition rates that have increased faster than family incomes for years, and that is not a sustainable trend. Although these factors, altogether, these factors limit universities' ability to continue to increase tuition. Federal and state budget pressures are also a factor. We heard earlier from Paul Stebbins about the condition of the federal government. He quoted a figure, I believe, of $17 trillion of debt, but if you include the off-balance sheet debt for social programs, you get up more into the neighborhood of $55 to $65 trillion. That means that federal debt and the federal budget is unlikely to improve anytime soon. To survive, universities are being forced to change, to provide greater access and flexibility to students, and to reduce the cost of delivery. With all that as a backdrop, I'll now turn to the question, what makes a course qualify for academic credit? To shed some light on this question, I'll review the process that we would follow at the University of Utah if a student came to us having completed a MOOC for credit and asked, will my credits transfer? The answer to this question varies by institution, and accordingly, it is not a question that I can answer for all universities. But hopefully, the process that I described for my university will prove instructive not only for MOOCs, but also for transfer credit more broadly at a large public state institution. When a student requests transfer credit, the first question that we need to address is whether we have discretion over the answer. In some cases, the business school does not. For example, at the freshman and sophomore levels, we are bound by state-imposed articulation agreements that require us to accept transfer credit taken at Utah's two-year community colleges. At present, my university does not have any articulation agreements with MOOC providers, but that could change and already has at some universities. For example, Colorado State University has announced that it will accept transfer credit from Udacity. But at the junior and senior undergraduate levels and for graduate classes, we, the business school, has complete authority to decide which courses are acceptable for transfer credit. In addition, there are limitations on the amount of credit that students can transfer and still receive a degree from the University of Utah. These limitations serve two purposes. One is quality control, and the other is to ensure that students have sufficient content from the University of Utah in order to warrant a University of Utah degree. To earn an undergraduate accounting degree from our school, students must complete 5 of 7 core accounting classes at the University of Utah. And the university requires that at least 30 credit hours be taken from our school. At the master's level, we only allow 6 hours of transfer credit to be applied to the degree. The process of determining whether transfer credit will be given is conducted by a faculty member in the relevant department. For example, if we had a student request transfer credit for an introductory accounting MOOC that they took for credit, the accounting department chair would assign a faculty member to undertake the assessment. The purpose of the assessment is to determine whether the content covered in the MOOC is sufficiently similar to the content that is covered in our class to warrant credit. In assessing content coverage, the faculty member would consider which institution had offered the course, whether they were accredited and by whom, and would examine materials specific to the course, including the syllabus, the textbook, and any other materials that might be available for review. In addition, the faculty member would need to assess whether the student had mastered the materials sufficiently in order to warrant credit. In making this assessment, the faculty member might rely on the student's grade in the course, or they may require the student to take an exam to demonstrate that they have adequate mastery of the material. In addition to deciding whether the course itself should qualify for transfer credit, we also would then have to decide how much credit we would be willing to grant. Universities must comply with the federal definition of a credit hour, which is defined by the amount of work that is required by the course. For a semester-long class, 1 credit hour is defined by 1 hour of direct faculty instruction plus a minimum of 2 hours of out-of-class work each week for 15 weeks. While this definition might work well for traditional campus-based courses, it doesn't work well for online courses such as MOOCs. And in these cases, metrics may need to depend less on contact hours and work hours and more on demonstration of acquired competencies. So that is the process that we would follow at my school if we had a student that wanted to receive transfer credit for a MOOC or for any other class for that matter. But some schools and institutions are experimenting with other approaches. San Jose State University has partnered with Udacity to offer MOOCs for credit to their students. And the University of Wisconsin encourages students to take online courses such as MOOCs, but then complete assessment tests controlled by the university in order to determine whether credit will be given. Incorporating a MOOC into the content of an existing course, similar to what the University of Wisconsin is doing, is a relatively expeditious way of incorporating MOOC content into the classroom. Faculty members have a lot of discretion over course content and delivery. If there was a MOOC out there that covered the material that I teach in my class, I could use it in a flipped classroom model with virtually no immediate direct oversight. That said, student evaluations and course materials are subject to departmental review, at least annually, and so there would be consequences if that decision did not pay off. States and educational foundations are also experimenting with the question of MOOCs and the granting of credit. At one point, California proposed creating a list of approved MOOCs that public colleges would have been required to accept for credit. Essentially, they were creating an articulation agreement aimed at MOOCs. But that bill has subsequently been shelved, at least for now. The American Council on Education has a research effort underway to examine the academic potential of MOOCs. They have already recommended 5 Coursera courses for college credit. None of these are business courses as of yet. There are a number of challenges associated with the process of determining what qualifies for credit from a faculty member's point of view. Sometimes, perhaps due to the passage of time, the course materials available for review are limited, and sometimes they're not even in English. In these cases, an external vendor might be needed in order to undertake the assessment. Sometimes the student's grade is not informative of their level of mastery of the material. And in that case, the faculty member might require the student to take a test in order to demonstrate mastery. But this adds to the burden on the faculty member who likely has received no formal training in how to assess classes for transfer credit. From the perspective of external constituents who rely on these assessments, such as NASBA, there are several challenges. First, these assessments necessarily rely on individual expert judgments. But at the same time, multiple players can be involved: states, universities, colleges, and individual faculty members all have some role to play in the transfer credit decision. And finally, the process is not uniform, but as I said earlier, varies by institution. So there are many challenges before us, but there are also many opportunities to improve. And the American Accounting Association is presently engaged in a project to ensure it is well positioned to help its members and other key partners take full advantage of the opportunities before us. In May 2012, recognizing the massive change that was happening in the world of higher education, then President-elect Karen Pincus challenged our board to begin the process of building a bridge to our future. And so the Sharpening Our Vision project was begun, and the board, along with AAA Council and 51 members serving on 4 task forces, conducted an in-depth environmental scan and invested countless hours generating over 50 unique ideas to take advantage of the opportunities before us to better serve members and to become a more impactful organization for society. The result of those efforts is a proposal to form 4 centers within the American Accounting Association to augment our current structure and to empower us to pursue new activities and strengthen existing activities for the benefit of our members and society. The proposed centers focus on advancing accounting in the areas of education, practice, research, and in the public interest. Today, I'll just touch briefly on the mission and value proposition of each of these centers and provide an example of one sort of activity that the given center might engage in. The Center for the Advancement of Accounting Research grew out of the seeds of innovation discussion that was begun when Greg Waymeyer, another professor, was president of the AAA. The mission of the center is to engage diversity in thought to reimagine accounting issues and problems. And the value provided by the center will include new opportunities for members to engage in cross-disciplinary research, opportunities to develop new avenues for research, access to funding sources to support research, and resources and activities to help keep faculty and Ph.D. students abreast of developments in research methods and questions. As an example of the type of activity that this center might engage in, envision a cross-disciplinary conference on an issue such as big data that is intended to prime the pump for new research questions and methods that cut across AAA sections and includes disciplines outside of the field of accounting. The mission for the Center of the Advancement of Accounting Practice is to build a learned profession for the future through the purposeful integration of accounting research, education, and practice. The value provided by this center will include new opportunities for members and business to work together in solving problems, the ability to sustain efforts to build a bridge between business and the academy, and enhanced opportunities for members to impact business through teaching and research. As an example of the type of activity that this center might engage in, envision a Nature magazine for business, the mission of which is to ensure that the results of academic business research is rapidly disseminated to the global business community in a manner that conveys their importance to practice. The mission of the Center for the Advancement of Accounting in the Public Interest is to engage scholars and other like-minded individuals and organizations in efforts to inform the debate around critical financial and business issues facing society. The value proposition of this center includes new opportunities to use the strength of the AAA brand to establish our voice in the discussion of critical issues which impact the financial well-being of citizens the world over. New opportunities to engage in research and education to inform the discussion around such issues, and new opportunities to use the strength of the AAA brand to establish our voice in the discussion of issues that impact higher education specifically. As an example of the type of activity that this center might engage in, envision research and outreach efforts backed by the substance of the AAA brand, which inform the debate around critical issues such as the threat national debt poses to the global economy. And finally, the Center for the Advancement of Accounting Education will take a leadership position in the development and dissemination of new ideas for addressing the evolving landscape of accounting education. The value proposition of this center includes a central location for resources and activities to help faculty, Ph.D. Students, and accounting departments to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of their teaching. New opportunities to use the strength of the AAA brand to create and implement metrics and practices for enhancing, assessing, and certifying teaching impact and effectiveness, and new opportunities to partner with organizations also concerned about accounting education, such as NASBA. As an example of the type of activity that this center might engage in, envision a AAA-sponsored rating process for the accounting MOOCs that we were just discussing earlier, incorporating a formal assessment as well as member feedback, resulting in a AAA seal of approval. In 2016, AAA will celebrate its 100th anniversary. There it is. The proposed additions to our structure will create opportunities to strengthen our ties with key organizations such as NASBA and position the AAA to be even more impactful during its next 100 years. With that, I will close. And I thank you for your time and attention. I'll turn the time over to Jan and Jerry, and then we will have some time for questions.